Hello and welcome to another video lesson with Mr. Roman. Today we're going to be talking about classifying angles. And if you look at the picture here, we have several angles in the picture. And we're going to classify different types of angles within the diagram. So here, let's start with vertical angles. Vertical angles are usually formed by two lines that make up an X like this. And within this diagram we have angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the pairs of vertical angles are 1 and 3 are vertical angles. So 1 and 3. And then 4 and 2 are vertical angles. Now we can say from the diagram that angle 4 and angle 2 are congruent. And we can also say angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. So these two angles are the same, these two angles are the same. But obviously angle 4 and angle 1 are not the same, and 3 and 2 are not the same. So pairs of vertical angles here. Within the diagram to the left, we look at vertical angles and we see, well, we have an X shape formed here. So our pairs of vertical angles are going to be 3 and 5. So 3 and 5 are a pair of vertical angles, and they are congruent. And then we would say the angle 4 is a vertical angle with 1 and 2 combined. So if we look here, here's one line, here's the other line. 1 and 2 combined then would be the second pair of vertical angles. So we have 4 and then the angle formed here by 1 and 2. If we were looking at the diagram and we wanted to show a linear pair of angles, so looking at this diagram, a linear pair of angles, linear pair are two angles that essentially form 180 degrees and whose rays of the non-common side are opposite rays. So really what you have to have are two adjacent supplementary angles are really what you need to have here with the opposite rays at the end. So this is what a pair of linear angles look like. And in the figure we can see that 5 and 4 are a pair of linear angles. And we can also see that 4 and 3 are a pair of linear angles, so formed by this line. And then we can see that if we wanted to, 5 combined with 1 and 2 here would form linear angle. And then 3 formed with 1 and 2 would form a linear angle. But the more obvious ones are 5 and 4, 4 and 3. Those are pairs of linear angles. Next, complementary angles. So complementary angles are two angles that form, or two angles whose measure adds up to 90 degrees. And in the diagram here we have angle 1 is actually equal to 90 degrees. And since angle 1 forms a 180 degree with 2 and 3, we can say the measure of 2 and 3 then is equal to 90 degrees. Therefore, 2 and 3 must be complementary. So 2 and 3 are complementary angles. Next, we'll talk about supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are two angles whose measure adds up to 180 degrees. And here, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this. But 5 and 4, two angles that add up to 180 degrees, which would be a straight line going across. 4 and 3 add up to 180 degrees. Next we'll talk about adjacent angles. So adjacent angles are angles that share a common side and a common vertex. So here's angle 1, here's angle 2. This would be an example of adjacent angles. Here, if I say angles 1, 2, these are not adjacent angles because they don't share the same vertex. They share a common side here, but not a common vertex. So these would not be adjacent angles. And adjacent angles don't overlap each other. So if we had another ray out here, we could say 3. We would not say angle 3 and then this angle here are adjacent because they're overlapping each other. So in this diagram, when we look at the picture, we can say a number of angles are adjacent. We could say 5 and 4 are adjacent, 4 and 3 are adjacent, 2 and 3 are adjacent, 1 and 2, and 1 and 5. Be careful. Adjacent angles don't mean that you have this kind of figure. Let's say this is 1 and this is 2, and they share that common vertex. Angles 1 and 2 here are not adjacent angles. So in the diagram, we would not say that 5 and 2 are adjacent. That would be incorrect because they don't share a common side. And nor would 4 and 2 be adjacent angles. Next, acute angles. Acute angles are angles that are less than 90 degrees in their measure. So really we can say that angles 5, 2, and 3 are all acute angles in this picture. Obtuse angles are angles that have their measure as greater than 90 degrees. So in this picture we could say angle 4 is greater than 90 degrees. And we could also say, if we wanted, that from here to here would also be an obtuse angle. So really the measures of 1 and 2 combined would be greater than 90 degrees. Next, a straight angle. Straight angles are angles that are 180 degrees in measure. So really they just form a straight line is what a straight angle is. So straight angle here would be here and here. So if we put dots on this, and we said this was A and this was B, C, D, E. We could say angle CBA. CBA is 180 degrees, so that's a straight angle. And then angle DBE. DBE would also be a straight angle. And lastly, a right angle. So here, a right angle we could say that angle CBF, angle CBF is a 90-degree angle. Right angle obviously meaning that it's equal to 90 degrees. And we could also say angle FBE. So angle FBE is also a right, oh, I'm sorry, not FBE, angle FBA. So this being F, FBA would also be a 90-degree right angle. And this concludes our review of classifying angles.